welcome back to our next installment of Dream Building 101. I am your host, Dr. Ebony Potts. I'm the author of Next Exit Your Destiny, taking the road towards the life of your dreams. And I have the esteemed pleasure of interviewing Mr. Wayne Jackson. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Mr. Jackson was influential in my life, and everyone, I'm sure, from TCNJ could say the same. The College of New Jersey. He worked there for, I'm not sure even how many years he was there. I'm sure he could tell us that.
10
years. So he was there for quite some time, influencing students in a positive way. When I was there, he worked with EOF program. He worked with diversity. He worked with the Black Student Union. So just an all-around great guy, great influencer on campus. So I'm very, very honored to be able to interview him this morning. He has made a transition since I was in college, umpteen years ago. But we'll let him speak more to that. Again, so why don't you tell everybody who's not familiar with you, who you are, what you do, what titles you hold.
Well, I am currently the director of the Multicultural Academic Support Services office at the University of Central Florida. And so what does all of that entail, right? Because that's a mouthful. Really, I work with all the multicultural, first generation, and low income students at the university. Now, if you're not familiar with UCF, we are huge. We have an undergraduate total enrollment of over 70,000. And so, yeah, it's astronomical. And we are also a Hispanic serving institution, and probably in another 2 to 3 years, we'll probably be a minority serving institution. Now, if you're not familiar with all those designations, what does all of that mean? Well, really, all of that means, an HSI means that 25% of all of the students that attend that university are Hispanic or Latinx. If it's an MSI, that means over 50% of all of the students that attend that university are students of color. So you can think, with 70,000 students, there are a lot of multicultural students. As a matter of fact, our population of just first generation students is over 13,000. So, and our particular department is kind of responsible for all of these. So when I take a look at my database of all of the students that we're supposed to work with, it is about 33, 34, 35,000 students that we kind of try to provide advocacy and support and those types of things. So yeah, my job is never ending.
And you, especially in the field that you're in, you are definitely in the business of dream building, working with first generation students many a times who didn't think that college or higher education was even an option for them. So you are really at ground zero of building dreams, building hopes, helping students find goals and, look for fulfillment for them. A lot of times in areas that they didn't even think was possible, correct?
That's correct. I mean, it starts with a dream, and then from there it becomes a vision. And then after that, it's a reality. Now, the whole piece of that is that I try to tell students, you got to think big. How many times have we told ourselves, I can't do that. I'm not that smart. I don't think I have the capability to do it. And we got to get that out of our head. If you don't think you have the capability, you go and you get some knowledge so that you can do it. And so all of those things are, I kind of want to tell people that one of the things that you've got to do, and I tell my students at the school all the time, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. The people you surround yourself with can many times determine just how far you will go. And so if you're surrounding yourself with people who really aren't about anything, they don't have any goals, they don't have any vision, guess what? You won't have any goals and you won't have any vision. And so you want to surround yourself around people who are striving for success, who are trying to make sure that they are reaching those goals. And first of all, you got to establish goals.
You are literally going through my book. Like, you are going through chapter through chapter, because I mean, it's the same exact thing that I outlined in my book.
That's right, girl. That's right.
So in the lessons that you're teaching your students in the gems you're dropping, it's not just for the 18, 19 to 20 to 21. These things apply no matter what it is you're trying to get, whether you're trying to get a college degree, whether you're trying to open a business, whether you're researching that business. Again, like I said, you're literally speaking chapters in my book about putting things in front of you, writing down your goals. And I have a whole chapter where I talk about education and how educators do this on a regular basis. They start with a goal in mind, and what it's called is backwards design. They start designing incremental steps to get there, because people get tied up. A lot of times, I want to open a restaurant that's going to be, the biggest in Atlanta. It's okay to start delivering sandwiches. It's okay to, start with, meals that you're cooking out of your home. Again, incremental steps, putting those goals in front of you. Again, very, very important, no matter what age group you're in, especially when you have lots of people who are my age or even older, and they get to a point where they're perhaps dissatisfied with what they were doing and they start wanting to transition. Again, those same steps that you are talking about can be applied to any situation, as long as you're trying to make a change and you're going after a goal.
Mm-hmm. And I'll give you a case in point. I'm probably about 3 years away from retiring. So I'm already looking at, what am I going to do when I retire? So I'm in the process now, and many of those steps that you already talked about, I'm in the process of developing a nonprofit organization that will do the same things that I'm doing, except it's on a national basis. So, helping students, trying to prepare them in regards to graduate school, trying to prepare them in regards to, how do I go out and get that job? How do I make sure my resume is right? How do I make sure that I'm doing all of those things necessary, so when it comes time for me to get that job, I've got all of those experiences and those internships needed in order to get there. And so I'm in the process of developing that now, so that hopefully within the next 2 to 3 years, that is taking off. And so even at my age, I'm still using all of those things that you talked about, because I realize just how important they are. And so I'm working a full-time job and really doing the research and getting all the information that I need is another full-time job, preparing myself for that.
Awesome. So what was your career path? What led you down the road that you are on and have been on for, quite some time, as far as developing individuals, helping people, students? How did you get here?
I was a mass communications, radio and television major. I was very active in radio. And so one of the things that I wanted to do as a college student is I wanted to make sure that I had a job before I graduated. And so when I was working at, I attended Norfolk State University. When I was working at Norfolk State as working in the radio station, there was a station in Williamsburg, Virginia, called our station manager and said, "Hey, listen, we're looking for someone. Can you recommend that person or recommend someone?" And so the station manager recommended me. I went up, they interviewed me, they offered me the job. So one, I had my job before I graduated. When I got up there, I realized I was the only African-American that worked at the radio station. So coming from an HBCU to now working where you're the only African-American straight out of college was an experience. But I learned a lot. I learned I had to speak up for myself. And then I learned my craft. And so after about 2 years being there, people have watched and listened to what I've been doing. I had a friend of mine, and this is another thing that I want to let individuals know, is that your work follows you. And so because my work followed me, I got a call from another colleague of mine that I went to school with at Norfolk State. And she said, "Hey, we've got an opening And we're looking for a regional reporter, and we want to know if you would be interested in becoming our regional reporter. And it was in the area where I lived, so it was great. And so I went over there after 2 years, and I worked there for about 2 years. And our station was like one of the top stations in the state. I won like 3 awards for my reporting and those types of things. And then after that, another station called me, and they said, hey, we've seen what you've done, and we want to hire you. And so this was at a state regional network. And so I had to move from Newport News, where I lived, up to Richmond. And so I lived there for about 3 years. And then after about the second year, the person who hired me left. He got a job in Sacramento. And then another person came in. And, this is why I say sometimes things that are negative can always end up being positive. And so this person really didn't care too much for me. I was one of those go-getters, because in the media, the objective is you want to get the story first. And her philosophy was, I don't care about getting the story first. And so we clashed. And so one thing led to another. And, when someone wants to try to find something wrong with you, they will. I mean, nobody here is perfect. And so what they said was, well, we need people who are good anchors, people who can anchor broadcasts. And we've heard complaints from our stations that they don't like how you anchor. I like, my question, well, who were they? Let's see the complaints. I never got to see them, but it was the process of developing something to eventually get rid of me. And that's what they did. They eventually got rid of me. They fired me. And I always tell students when I tell them this story, the interesting thing was they fired me one week, and then the next week they had to call me back because I had won an award, and they needed to give me the award that I had won. Well, as I said before, I went for 1.5 years, and then I eventually got a job at the community college, working at Mercer County Community College as an admissions counselor, and going out to schools and telling high school students about going to college and that type of thing. And from there, it led to the College of New Jersey, where I met you and quite a few other students, and we ran the minority mentoring program. And then from there, going on to Rowan University, I was assistant director of EOF, Educational Opportunity Fund. And then finally, I just started getting tired of the cold. And I told my wife, you know what, I want to move somewhere where it's warm. And here we are in Florida. And so I've been at the University of Central Florida. It will be 14 years come next January. Next January, it'll be 14 years. I didn't know I would be here this long, but here I am. And so that's kind of the story.
What would you say was the biggest hurdle that you faced along your path? If you had to pick one, of course, people of a certain age, myself included, there's definitely more than one, but what would you say was one of your biggest hurdles that you could think of?
Obviously.
And how did you overcome it?
Yeah, obviously the biggest hurdle was being unemployed, because I have always worked. And so to be on my own, have my own stuff, and then have to move back to my parents' house and live there, and sending out, because keep in mind, back in that time, they didn't have internet. This is the late 80s. They didn't have cell phones. They didn't have emails. So when you sent out a resume, you had to type it up. You had to put a
stamp on that thing.
Put a stamp on it, and you had to send it out. All right. And you're just hoping that someone would respond back to you and call you. So that was probably the toughest time, just because, when you're used to doing your own thing, and now you're back in your parents' house, you got to live under their rules. Hey, that's an altogether different thing right there. But, it worked out. Fortunately, I had parents that were there to support me.
You could speak to someone who is just getting started on their path. And a lot of times, like you just said, that path may start with a closed door. When I talked to Erin Hendricks Moore, you didn't watch that interview, that was one previous to you, where she Again, a lot of times she got fired from a job. That's what propelled her into her catering business. When I talked to Pastor Jamal, which again, still blows my mind, when I spoke to him about, what propelled him into his situation. Again, a lot of times it's a closed door that sends you in a different direction. And a lot of times the direction that you didn't think you were going to go in, because as I was telling Aaron, if somebody would have told me a year ago that I'll be putting anything on YouTube and interviewing anyone on YouTube, I would have laughed in their face, So, but a lot of times it's a closed door. So someone that's watching this has a door that just closed, and they have that fear, they have that worry, that might be sending them in a different direction. What advice would you have for that person?
I think if that door closed, it closed for a reason. And see, sometimes what we do is we are in a job and we get comfortable. We don't want to go nowhere. We know the job. We know it's going to pay us every 2 weeks. We know we're going to have benefits. And sometimes our world has to be shaken. And sometimes we have to lose that job in order to eventually go where it is that we are destined to be at. Because if not losing that job, we would stay there forever.
Right.
And so think from the standpoint of your strengths, your weaknesses, the passion that you have. What are some of the things that you love doing? And then twofold. One, looking for another job in that area that is your passion. But two, also developing something on the side, doing that same passion. One of the things I did not talk about is that we also have, I have a partner of mine that lives up in the Philadelphia area and works at a community college. We have a consulting business. And so how did that come about? Well, it came about because we were doing workshops at these various conferences, and it was wall to wall. I mean, every
Right.
time we did a workshop, it was standing room only. And we started putting our heads together. So like, if everybody's coming to our workshop, would they invite us to come to their college and pay us?
Right.
And so we developed a consulting business, and yeah, there were schools that would invite us to come in to help them. And so that's also what we do periodically. As a matter of fact, we're even doing, well, because, of COVID, we're even doing virtual ones. So we have 2 workshops coming up in February at a conference called the First Year Experience. And we also did a workshop virtually for the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities. And we had at our workshop that we did, because we did a workshop on male Hispanic and African-American male retention and graduation. Now, there were only 400 people at the conference. 150 of them were at our workshop.
Wow.
So almost half of the people at the conference were at our workshop. But it all started because we started noticing that people were coming to our stuff. And so you want to begin to think about, as I said before, what is a passion for me?
So that's definitely very important.
Definitely.
Anything else you want to add, or any questions for me?
Girl, I'm just, how are you doing? Let me ask you, because, I don't get to see you that much. So, it's just me and you talking right now. So how's it going for you?
Well, I am definitely going through a transition. As I said previously, if someone would have told me that I would be interviewing anyone on YouTube, not too long ago, I would have laughed and said, that is definitely not me. I'm not a Front Street person. However, I also have been down the path of helping students, helping people see around obstacles, figure out what their next steps were. I was in public education for almost 20 years. And as I told Pastor Jamal and Aaron as well, I was told, to write almost 20 years ago. And, I sit back and kind of think about what kind of things would I have maybe not had to go through had I been obedient when I was told to do what I was told to do. But I don't think that it probably would have happened any other way, because I needed those lessons. I needed to go through some of the things that I went through in order to have something to write about. So,
Right.
like I said, I was told to write almost 20 years ago, and I finally decided to be obedient. I was going through something at the time, and a lot of those lessons, a lot of the things I learned, a lot of the things that I told students and teachers and other people that I worked with, it just kind of flowed, and that's how I arrived at the book. And again, like you said, surrounding yourself with the right people, who are pushing you and motivating you to do more, come outside of your comfort zone, is how we arrived here with me interviewing other individuals, because as a growth or a portion of the book, what I wanted to do is to have concrete examples of people who went through some of the things that I spoke about in the book, that took some of those steps, so that people would have, kind of a living testimony to what I'm speaking of in the book, so that they could see themselves and also be able to kind of see, all right, well, this person is talking about the same industry that I'm speaking about, or this person is doing something similar to what I'm thinking about. So they gave me an idea. And you never know when you're going to hear something that might light that spark in you to propel you into what you're supposed to be doing. So, that's kind of, the short and dirty version of how I arrived at where we are at this time.
Well, you know how I think. When's the next book coming out?
Well, I am currently writing the next book. I just fleshed out the first few chapters. I got the name down, so I'm working on that as well. I'm not going to drop as exactly what it's about yet, but it will be the second book in my next Exit series. So my plan is to have that book out hopefully by this time next year. So that's the goal.
Well, hopefully, if everything goes well, and if we can get this nonprofit off the ground, we might try to use your book to help students, because the objective is to take this national, because there are so many students out there that are not getting the assistance that they need to prepare them. And so if we can get this business off the ground, we'll be talking more about maybe taking your book national, at least for all of our students, making it a recommended reading, and then having you come and talk to them about how they can. And
I would love to.
For the individuals that are listening, that's how the network works. The network works because we're all networking and helping each other. So we're gonna keep our fingers crossed that happens, and we're gonna make this work, girl.
Well, I'm sure, I know that you'll be successful, because the passion that you're displaying right now in this video is the same passion I remember as a student at the College of New Jersey. That passion and that love of helping students reach their goals is definitely still there. That's what's won the awards. That's what's propelled you and made you successful thus far. And it's genuine. And, it comes through still. So I know that you'll be successful at what you're working on.
Well, we're going to work as hard as we can, because, there are lots of students. We're finding, I was just talking with a colleague of mine who's assisting me, and her objective is to help prepare students for graduate school. And so now that we've gone to this COVID-19 and everything is virtual, the word has gotten out, and she's getting individuals attending her virtual workshops from California, from Georgia, from Connecticut. And she's like, but the things we're providing them are just basic, but there are so many students out there that are not getting that. And right. So our objective is to, if you want to go to graduate school, depending on what your major is, our objective is to prepare you to go to graduate school for free. Because there are colleges and universities out there that are paying students. We got a ton of students from the University of Central Florida that went and got their masters and their PhDs, and they never spent a dime, not a dime. And so that is the objective that we're trying to do, because there are colleges and universities and graduate schools who are looking for good students, but many of those students don't know what it takes in order to prepare themselves so that these colleges and universities will not only just accept them, but accept them and give them money. And so that's the objective of what we're trying to develop now.
Well, I thank you so much, Mr. Jackson, for our little chat this morning. I appreciate you. And, it does my heart some good to just see that, students are still being able to be motivated by you and what you do. Because like I said, the passion and what you do definitely still comes through. So I definitely appreciate it. I know that someone watching this was able to get what they needed by tuning into this today. So I thank you on my behalf and theirs as well.
Well, thank you so much, girl. I'll be looking forward. Like I said, I got 2 more books to read. Yours is the 3rd book coming up I'll be reading. But by the time I get to that, you'll almost be ready for that next book. So I'll be reading both of your books.
All
Getting
right.
ready to do it.
All right. Thank you so much. And if you liked what you heard today, please hit that like button as well as subscribe. And again, thank you, Mr. Jackson.
My pleasure. Take care.
All right. Thanks again.
Sick of sitting at your job, daydreaming about the life that you would have if you'd won that big jackpot? Do you want to design a life for yourself that you don't need to take a vacation from? Do you have a vision for your life that you just don't know how to make a reality? Next Exit Your Destiny is a witty, comical, yet straightforward guide that gives you common sense, easy to follow steps to make the life you dream of the life that you live. Get off of Unfulfilled Street, Unhappy Way, and Sunday Night Blues Boulevard and take the next exit towards your destiny today.